Okay. Well, welcome. I'm so excited, seriously. Audience, we were just exchanging tattoo stories. Well, okay, so to summarize the work that you do, so you're a clinical psychologist and you work in the addiction space. You are also in recovery for yourself.
Yes.
Okay, is that a
Yeah,
good
that's
summary?
it. And I specialize in codependency in the last like 20 years just because I feel like it's underneath a lot of the addiction. And most people that get sober then struggle with codependency, which that word I hate because no one even knows what it means anymore. But we can talk about that.
Friend, listen. Do you understand how long it took me to really I'm still unpacking
Yes.
codependency. Like, I've heard this word my whole life
Yes.
because I grew up with addict parents. So
Oh,
I was
good.
attending meetings, you know what I mean, with my family. And my mom gave my grandma a book, the Codependent No More book. You know what I mean? And I was hearing this word my whole life. And I'm like, in some ways, at an early age, I was kind of able to isolate and use my context clues. And I could see like some of the dynamics within codependency, like enabling, that was something that I learned really early to
Yes.
how to back out of and not be that person. But there was just so many different like I had to come to grips with like this was probably well once I started like my little healing journey a couple years ago, somewhere in there I was like I'm kind of codependent with my children.
Oh,
And not in like a it wasn't a sweet way. It wasn't like, oh, I can't stand to be away from them because God knows that wasn't the truth. But it was more like, I don't know how to function if they're not happy. I don't know how to function if they're not achieving. I don't know how to not view them as a direct extension and reflection of me. I also don't know how to ask them to do basic household chores and it not make me feel shame for needing the quote unquote help. You know what I mean? Like there was all kinds of shit to unpack there. So I love that you're saying most people don't know what it means because I think that's so true. I am still decoding the word.
oh man. Yeah, and I mean, you've just said like 20 things we could do an hour podcast on. Children and parents with children for me is huge. And I've done a few talks on like parenting podcasts and stuff, but I think it's the hardest group for us to really see our codependency. And the problem is, it's like this famous writer said, if I keep packing my kid's backpack, they're going to think they can't do it. And that to me is so much of it. It's like out, and we can talk about this too, out of our own fear, like you just said, fear of them not achieving, fear of, feeling guilty of asking them to do something, fear of them not liking me, fear of them getting upset, fear of them having feelings, whatever it is, it changes our behavior. So our behavior is being directed by their responses to us or our fear of their responses rather
Yeah.
than what's really true for us. So that's a whole thing in itself. And I feel really strongly about it because over the year, I have a 25-year-old now. And I think I started my first Al Anon meeting was when I was pregnant with him. So that's how long it's been. And
Wow.
it really the thing about codependency is, and again, we're on a roll already, is we think we're helping someone. We think we're doing something for them, but in reality, it's for us. It's out of our own fear and discomfort. And so parents, my journey in parenting, a lot of it was around what is getting activated for me that I'm about to do
Yes.
this behavior? What is
Yes.
this reminding of my own childhood, of my own experience? Because parenting is all about the parents. It's not
Yes.
kids, right?
Do you know that's why I hate working with children? Because parents refuse to be aware of that and they
Yes.
will not acknowledge it and they will
Yes.
literally I did my grad school internship practicum thing with kids and I
Yes.
remember parents being like literally fix them. Bitch, go to therapy yourself. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? And I hate it. I hate it. And yeah, so I really hate that, but also I oh my gosh, I resonate so hardcore. What is being activated in me? Because
Yes.
you can when it comes to parenting, you can interchange the word codependent with people pleasing because
Oh,
you're
yeah, absolutely.
rushing to fix
Yes.
something because you are afraid of your response to their
Yes.
environment. And like, I just can't, I can't. But
Yes.
I was guilty. Listen, I was the one walking around like, I can't fucking do this.
Yes.
I mean, I was activated from the time I woke up till the time I went to sleep. So, but
Absolutely.
everything they did triggered my shame, everything.
Yes.
Every need they had just reminded me I wasn't enough to be a good mom. Every need. And I had to reframe all of that and understand like
Yes.
these are little humans. They're not your property. And ultimately, every little caveat of their life is not your responsibility.
We give them so much power too. I mean, I remember being at a mall one time and I heard this upset and I was walking through the mall and I looked over and there was like 15 people in like a semicircle up against this wall. And I heard crying and when I went over, there was literally a 2-year-old that was controlling 15 people. And I thought, that's codependency. And and the problem with parenting these days, and I did a talk at this last year, is they're so afraid because it used to be so, like spanking and hitting and violent and all
Mhm.
that control. It's swung to the exact opposite, which is I'm going to negotiate with them about every frickin' thing. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just need to be a parent. These people were negotiating with a 2-year-old. You don't do that. You just set a
A
boundary. You pick
two-year-old's
them up
not
and you
capable
take
of
them out.
negotiation, first of all.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
but no, I hear what you're saying, and I've certainly been guilty of that myself. I get a
Yes.
little agitated when people like, I have a friend who was constantly like, if I brought up co-regulation, they think
Mm.
that that means, like, being like, "Oh, I can't deal with it." And I'm like, "No, actually, that it's the exact opposite of that. It's being very attending to the
Yeah.
situation and you staying regulated even when they aren't." That's how
Yes.
codependency comes in. I can't be regulated if you're not regulated.
Right.
And that's an area I'm still working very, very, very hard on. But
Yes.
every time I do it, it deepens my understanding of what I am capable of.
Yes.
So I mean, it's changing even still just the relationships with my children. And it makes you view just other humans differently. So it really
Yes.
does become the most empowering thing you can do is just to understand you are enough and
Yes.
you don't have to defend, you don't have to explain, you don't have to do any of those things that you were programmed to believe that you
Yes.
did. And
Yes.
usually we're repeating codependent dynamics that we've been a part of, in childhood. But yeah,
Yes.
I totally agree with you. And it's just it can be so painful for everybody involved if you're not staying in a centered place when kids are
Absolutely.
going through something.
Yeah, and I mean, it comes down to, and you already know this, it's really about tolerating discomfort. I mean,
Yes.
that's really what it's all about because, if my son at 12, started getting really angry with me because I told him he needed to stop playing his video game and do homework. It's not that he's angry that it's upsetting to me, it's that my system now is getting activated and fearful because he's angry. So it's
Exactly.
like, yeah, so how can I just manage, tolerate, learn to be comfortable with what's ever happening for me so I can be the solid ground and keep repeating the boundary? And, the trouble is the kid will do something and the parent will go into their own activation and they'll maybe get upset with them. And then it'll just be escalation, escalation, escalation,
Yes, because then it's
escalation.
just about each prior behavior. It's not about the original issue I hear you, and you're still
Yes.
gonna get off your game.
Yeah.
Yes, and
Yes.
that was eye-opening for me
Yes.
because I mean, first of all the world revolved around me, so everything was about me.
Yes.
Like, I wasn't as bad as my grandma or even my mom, but, like, I was
Yes.
bad. It was all about me, and, like, I can't believe after everything I do for you that you would treat me like that, and it's like, they're not treating you like anything. They're having an emotional response, and you're making it about you. Like, can we stay grounded and chill and be like, "Yo, I hear you, but you're gonna have to get off the game because you have to
Right.
do your work." But
Right.
I still the one area that I really, like, see myself rushing to attendance is if I think, okay, like, my oldest son, super ADHD, and he gets very dysregulated very quickly about, like, not being able to find his shit. So I've noticed recently, like, he has class on Wednesday, so, like, I've noticed on Tuesday evenings, I'm like, "Hey, so have you made sure you've got, clean clothes?" Just, like,
Right.
all where your
Right.
car key is, all the things. I'm okay with that for right now. We just lost, my middle child in December
What?
to a synthetic opioid overdose.
No, I
Yeah.
am so sorry.
Thank you.
I had
Yeah, that
no
was
idea
another reason
it
I was
was.
excited about this conversation because, I mean, I think it's important to talk about why people are drawn to escape through substance, you know? And that was him. Like his code, he really could not feel safe in conflict of any
Yes.
kind. Any
Right.
kind of conflict was so dysregulating to him.
Right.
And also he just stayed dysregulated from ADHD and, whatever.
Right.
Um and I saw he was a real big like dissociator, he just loved
Yes.
to be off in la la land.
Yep.
Took a long time for me to actually see that, but once I did, I was like, "Oh, he really do be just marching to the beat of his own drum."
Yes.
But he wanted to escape. He loved drugs, and
Right.
he
Right.
would refer to himself as a drug addict, and that just didn't feel like I was like, I mean, I know that you love drugs, but, like, you just use them to es I it was a whole thing. I
Right.
wasn't like, I just saw it very differently. In some
Yes.
ways, I'm not gonna say, like, I wish anything. If I could change things, I would, obviously, but I just saw it as, like, well, we just need to work on these skills so that this isn't the thing that you wanna do. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
But
Right.
you know how
Right.
addicts are. He was telling me what I wanted to hear, and you know
Oh
what I mean?
god,
He
yes.
was so
They
good
are
at it.
so tricky. Oh my god, are
Oh,
you
yeah.
kidding? I know. I mean, we
So
lie
good.
and we deny and it's such a lethal illness and people, I mean, it's like they forget that addicts, that's the most normal thing to do, to tell a lie. And especially these days, I mean, you can do one thing and overdose and die. I mean, it's not like the old days where I could, like,
Right.
party
Well,
for
and that's what happened. It's a
years.
new synthetic opioid
Right,
that's hit the streets. He's the
right.
first in Oklahoma. Like, if you Google the drug, his picture's everywhere because of it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was had no idea that's what he was buying, thought he was buying oxy, killed him immediately.
Oh my gosh. It's so
Yeah, so we're
awful.
kinda living through the PTSD of, like, finding him at home and whatever, so
Oh, I
I am
bet.
coddling my oldest child, obviously, but I'm okay with that right now, and I think that's
Right,
the thing too, is making
right.
intentional decisions to nurture versus I'm activated and I gotta fix this feeling in myself, so I'm gonna run and do this, and I've learned I'm learning I'm actively putting intention behind what do I want to do in this
Yes,
situation. I
yes,
do want to be I think about the type of nurturing that I really need in times of crisis, and
yes.
it is the type that I'm trying to offer to my children now, whereas before I didn't have the capacity. So I was like, well, I'm gonna scream at you and dismiss your feelings, but I will take you to get food
Right,
and I'll buy you whatever you want. You know
right,
what I mean? So,
right.
I mean, I know how my child became who he was. I was a very emotionally unavailable parent, but I'm trying. You know what I mean? So like
Absolutely. And
I try
I
to just put intention behind it.
and I really believe this, and I don't know if you do, that every single person does the absolute best they can at any given moment. I mean,
Absolutely.
now I might know certain things I didn't know 20 years ago, but, and also I try not to pathologize. It's just not the way I think. Like, we have these childhoods. We
Yep.
develop these brilliant behaviors as kids to survive and feel safe, whatever those are. Maybe they are doing drugs. Maybe they're lying. Maybe they're, some may be more, negative than others, but it's how we coped. And they're
Yeah.
brilliant. The problem is, as we get older, we keep using these behaviors, even though they don't really work. And even though maybe we're safe now as adults, but we don't have any alternatives. And we still are
Right.
operating out of that underlying fear. So, I mean, yeah, it's funny because when you're saying that stuff about, having compassion for yourself, like my first, and I'm going to send you copies of my book, my first tip or tool in recovery from codependency is having compassion for yourself and self-care and reducing your load, because
Yes.
codependence, overfunction, overmanage, try to take care of everyone else, don't stop, are upset, anxious, depressed, everything. And the thing about codependency too is there's so many presentations. There can be someone
Yes.
who's very passive and people pleasing and like has a smile all the time. And then there can be someone who's just enraged all the time and
Yes.
controlling. And
With
so
30
it's
to-do lists and
yes,
yes, yes,
yes, manifests a lot of different ways. And at first,
yes,
it's just resting and taking a breath and saying, okay, what can I do today? What can I let go of? What are things that are going to make me feel better, etc.? Because it is stopping. And so that was a great
yes.
point. Yeah.
Well, I remember, like, there was a time when my boys were young and my daughter was a baby because there's quite a big age gap there.
Got
But
it.
I remember I was trying to be the perfect mother and making one or both of their lunches every day. And
Yeah.
that is the only reason I was doing it. Like, I did
Yes.
not have, they wanted me to. I was like, oh, well, the perfect mothers make their children's lunch when they request. But I was at the time working, I was a hospice social worker,
Wow.
and the hours during the week were not so bad, but unless you were on call, and so it was like it could be really intense sometimes,
Of
and
course.
like because it was a small hospice, so like on call was a lot, right? And I remember feeling so burnout, like with the tasks at home, because I also was one of those people who was afraid to ask for help, so I had to lie to myself and tell myself that nobody would help,
Yes.
and then I had to confirm that narrative over and over. But I I watched that movie Bad Moms, and they were like, "Fuck making the school lunches," kinda thing, and I was like, "Wait a second." That was, like, my gateway into, like, it probably doesn't matter that much, and I just
Right.
remember being like, "You know what? I think I have to decide that even if it does make me a bad mom, I can't do this anymore," and so
Right.
I no longer do that, but I think it's about, like, what do you have to give? And I'm
Yes.
very cautious about my capacity these days. I mean, I'm
Yes.
so grateful for my learning that I had prior to losing my son
Good.
because I have really good skills and tools,
Right.
but I knew right away. I was like, "Oh, I can't do anything that I dread. I can't do anything that feels too heavy, and I can't do, like,
Absolutely.
there's stuff like organizational stuff. If there's too many steps, I'm like, "Okay, who can I get to do this for me?"
Yes.
Because I'm getting overwhelmed, and I'm actually getting really good at telling people, "I'm not going to organize or coordinate this because that type of thing is too overwhelming for me, so here's who you can go to for that." Whereas before, I would've been like, "Well, it's just 2 steps," but I'm so grateful that I'm so willing to
Yes.
be like, "I can't do that," because people
Yes.
don't understand that that's why they're suffering, is they don't have the capacity for their current load.
Yes. I mean, and like I think you've mentioned on your website or where I looked you up, like boundaries obviously is huge in codependency recovery because it's learning how to speak up for ourselves, learning how to tell the truth, not enabling people, learning to express our feelings, even learning to identify our feelings. I mean, I've had
Yes.
patients, a couple come in and I'll be asking the addict, some questions, and the partner's answering the questions for them. Do you know what I mean? So it's like even
Yes.
just knowing what your feelings are, oftentimes someone can say what their partner's feeling, but not what they're feeling. So just starting to get in touch with that And getting rid of anything that is not a have to. I mean, especially in grief, right? When you start to
Yes.
grieve, it's all about, that Al-Anon expression, how important is it? Like asking yourself that question. Because so often when you're a perfectionist or an overfunctioner, everything feels like it's a 911. And the fact
Every
is, most stuff is not a 911. It really isn't. It just feels that way, especially if you grew up in addiction, especially if there was lots of chaos, especially if there was lots of crisis. Your system is used to operating at a certain level. And
Yeah.
so it's almost uncomfortable when it starts dying down a little bit. So,
I
yeah,
know, but
all
you
the,
know what's funny? When I would
yes,
hear that before, like, not everything's 911, I'd be like, "Okay, okay, okay, let me look."
yeah,
Um But it really like, I think you just don't know my life or something because,
right.
like, this is all you're wrong because it is all emergency. So,
Yes.
and I would try it, but every single I mean, when I say I woke up and went to sleep activated every single day of my life, it was
Yes.
so bad. And then
Yes.
as my children, like, were becoming teenagers and I had a kid who was fucking using drugs and stuff, like, I had I mean, literally, that was the catalyst for my mental health crisis was
Yes.
when he really, like,
Of
started
course.
getting in trouble because I was like, "Oh my god, I don't even know what to do."
That's right.
Thankfully, I got my shit together in the last couple of years to where I mean, I did my best, but
Yep.
I I was just lost. I was like, "Oh my god, I don't know." And it was really just the stress. I really wasn't taking on too much shame or anything about his behavior, surprisingly, but I was like, "I don't know what to do," and I was afraid. I was so afraid, and so it caused so much stress.
Of course. Oh my god, you've said so many things. So, this is the thing. First of all, when you say I wake up activated, I think, like, it sounds like another word would be I wake up anxious and afraid. You know what I mean? Like, that I have to suddenly manage everything, right?
Mhm.
I mean, if I'm waking up anxious and afraid, I'm gonna have to feel like I can control everything. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. So, you don't know this about me, but the reason I wrote a book is because my husband relapsed, my second
Mm.
husband. He was 15 years sober. We got married in 2006. And within a few years, he had a motorcycle accident. He started taking
Oh.
opiates. And all of a sudden, I hit this wall where I remember because he was lying to me about everything, right? I'm seeing 25 patients a week. I've been going to Al-Anon for a zillion years. I've been sober. And my husband relapsed, and I literally feel lost. And so think about that. Like, if I feel lost and I have a doctorate in psychology, all this experience, I've been doing this work forever, how is the average person going to know what to do with an active person in their life? And that's why I ended up doing a deep dive on this because it is not like getting sober where okay, I quit the drugs and the alcohol and now I can get on with my life. Healing from
Yeah.
codependency is much more tricky and complicated because you're dealing with patterns of behavior, like you talk about on your podcast, that you've had for years, that have worked for years. And that's going to be your toolkit. And you're thinking, okay, these are the things that are going to help me. But in the end, they actually do the exact opposite, and
Yeah.
we don't know that. So, when I pulled down a shoebox from the, closet one day and a bunch of pills rained down on my head, it
No.
was like my entire when you're like you think you're in a reality and then suddenly you're in a totally different reality, and I was like, all of a sudden, all his behaviors, everything that had been happening completely made sense. Like,
Uh-huh.
I'd get home from work and he might be asleep on the couch, and I'd think, oh, he's exhausted from work. Meanwhile, he had taken a bunch of Percocets. But you can rationalize and minimize and deny anything because the person is telling you this is the reality.
Right.
So just like the defenses and the cognitive patterns in addiction, like rationalization, denial, minimizing. It's the same thing with codependency. When another
Yes.
behavior, like your son or my husband is behaving in a certain way, we can say, "Oh, well, that's really not what it is. He said this." So
Right.
it's really hard to know reality. And that's why one of the tools when you're working with addicts is sticking with facts because nobody can argue with facts. That's what interventions are based on. It's not like you're getting together with the addict and you're saying, "Oh, you hurt my feelings when this happened." You say, "Dad, you forgot to pick me up at school 3 times." So, when you're dealing with someone like that, and even yourself to get out of your own denial, you try to say to yourself, "What are the facts here?" But it's a very, very tricky thing to deal with, as I discovered, because I had all the tools, but I didn't know what to do. So when you say that, it's
Yes.
like people don't know what the steps are. You know what I mean? And not everybody's gonna relate to Al-Anon, and, depending on what meeting you go to, it could be a shitty meeting, it could be, maybe you're not hearing what you need to hear. So,
Yeah.
support is so key. Yeah,
Wow, that's such a good point because even I felt like we've been attending a grief group,
great.
and I've always been very hesitant to do something like that
Yeah,
because I know how I enter spaces like that. I mean, I'm just
yep,
going to be honest.
yep,
And in my former self, I was easily agitated and pretty intolerant of personalities. So, like,
yep,
I just if you were
yeah,
different than me, I just couldn't stand it.
yep,
And so, but I wanted to be like my son was interested, and so I was like, I'll go with him, like
yep,
I'm gonna go. And I recognize, and then my daughter's going to one for her age group too, but I recognized I need out of the house more. I
yep,
want to talk and I want to just be around people who like I don't feel I have to censor myself at all. But when I walked into the space, everyone in there was exactly what I was expecting. And because I've just been a part of so many groups in my life of
yeah,
different types that, I just knew the different dynamics that come into play. And I felt the resistance happen
yep,
immediately. And felt a couple of judgments. And then I was like, Melissa, why are we here? We
right.
wanna be around people, we want out of our house, and we want to talk.
Good for
That's
you.
gonna accomplish this. Sit here and reserve your judgment. Just be
Yeah,
chill. And within 5 minutes of, like, relaxing and whatever, I totally loved it. Like, I was like, "Oh my god, this is so great." And
yes,
haven't missed a group. I'm
yes,
actually having some anticipatory grief about our session ending because we only have one left.
yeah,
But as we were leaving group Tuesday, I thought, because there's been a couple of times people showed up and never came back, and I wasn't surprised by it,
yeah,
but it was also like, I think if we could do a little better too about educating what groups really are for and how, go find one that you do like if you don't like this
yes.
one. Like I'm a part of a non-faith based one because that fits my needs
Just doesn't
better.
work. Right,
Yeah,
right,
but
right.
maybe you want the one inside of a church, you know what
Yes.
I mean? But I think I definitely had a misconception about what a grief group was. I really
Yes.
did. Even though I've worked in grief spaces for so long, I've never been a part of a grief group, and I
Yeah.
really didn't understand what it was. So, I like that the way you're framing that because it's also like there's so many supports
Yes.
and people have to be aware of those too, not just the tools that you use internally, but what's actually available to you.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just like AA. I mean, I might have gotten sober I got sober in 84 and AA was like probably one of the only options. I mean, there was a couple other options back there and some people love AA and some people hate it. And now there are so many different options online. There's, online groups. There's different, I've interviewed a bunch of them. I've been on their podcasts. They have their own communities, their own
Mhm.
programs. So, I mean, there's so many ways to get sober now. I mean, I think the only caveat I would have is, and kind of like the grief groups, is you want to find someone that knows what they're doing and takes it seriously because addiction especially, I'll see some Instagrammer that, has 3 months of sobriety and she's starting a community, you know what I mean? Which is
Honey,
like, okay,
yes.
that's
Yes.
fine, but also, with grief, I mean, I think it's just really important. I mean, the connections and having a space to talk and be validated to me is so important, no matter what issue you're trying to deal with. And you also need reality checks. I mean, the thing is, our minds will tell us all kinds of crazy shit. And I
Yes.
mean, we can't believe all that nonsense. So having other people reality check with us is super important.
That was something that really helped me in the early days was I mean, it's still early, we just hit 4 months, but the
Yeah.
earliest was to, if I was having a thought and we've all kind of leaned on each other for this, but if we're having a thought that's not going away, like,
Yes.
saying it out loud to each other
Yes.
and then someone offering a bigger truth to it, you know,
Yes.
'cause we really like most people, it would be one of those real, like, remorse, regret, guilt type, or even just in the manner in which he died and how we found him. Like, was
Yes.
there something more we could have done? You know what I mean? Like, things like that, and each having to reassure each other, like, because the drug that he died from was actually they're referring to it as Narcan resistant. It's that
Oh
strong.
my gosh.
Yeah, because it's 10 times stronger than fentanyl. And so, just, like, having to assure each other of, like, we did everything we
Yes.
could, or you know what I mean?
Yes,
But
which is a normal spiral people get into
yes,
afterwards,
yes, and
right?
so I felt, like, really good because I kinda modeled that first,
Yes.
like, being like, "Hey, I'm having a thought, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
workshop it with you guys," but it really did come in handy that we were so open to do that because the earliest days, you can't control
Oh,
what's,
no.
like, coming
Your
up,
mind's
you
gonna go
know?
crazy. Right.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
it was
Right.
well, and just the trauma of it, it
Oh
was
my gosh.
exhausting.
I can't imagine. Right. Right.
Yeah, it was rough.
Absolutely. Oh,
Well, so do you feel like I feel like this is oversimplifying, but is codependency, if you had to pick one thing to work with an addict around, would that be the one thing? Would that be the biggest thing?
yeah. I mean, if someone, I mean, it originated, like Al Anon with like a a woman married to a male alcoholic. Like that was the origin.
Oh
And
god.
yeah. And so
I'm picturing those dynamics.
the AA, it was like 100 male alcoholics got sober and one woman, I think, at the beginning. So then Melody Beattie wrote her book, and then there was all these ACOA books, Adult Children of Alcoholics, and codependency books, um, and then it's broadened though. Like, I think if you're a woman on the planet, most likely you're codependent because you're brought up to be a caretaker. You're brought up to sacrifice yourself and focus on others. So, I
Mhm.
mean, I think everybody has a certain degree of it, meaning I'm going to focus on another person's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are more of a priority than mine. So
Mhm.
I'm going to dismiss myself and think about them. Now, that could be an addict, or it could be someone who's depressed, or it could be your kid flunking out of high school. It could be anybody. And the thing is, the dismissing of ourselves comes at a huge cost because
Yeah.
when you do that for long enough, what's going to happen? You're going to have tons of resentments. You're going to be enraged. You're going to have anger issues. You're going to have anxiety. You're going to get depression. You're going to probably have some physical problems, headaches, stomach aches, whatever.
Yes.
So, I mean, it comes out there's such a huge cost, just like there's a huge cost to addiction. I mean, I believe people die from codependency also. I've had parents like remortgage their house for the 18th treatment center for their kid, and their health is going down the tubes. They can barely
Yes.
function. Then the woman gets cancer or whatever. I'm not saying it's a cause and effect,
Right,
but
but
the
it
thing
is what
about
it is.
it is what it is, and codependent people often neglect their own needs. And so that's
Yes.
why the mantra I have when I've done groups and stuff is, what do I want? What do I need? What do I want? What do I need? What do I want? What do I need? Because even identifying what you want, need. I've had people say, "I don't even know what my needs are." So even
Yes.
just clarifying, what is it that you need? And put the person over there. Like, it's like being addicted to a person is really what it is,
Yes, and
right?
this is why these conversations are so important because almost everything's an addiction if you
Yes.
haven't learned to manage your shit. Like I always said, I I hesitate to say this sometimes because I never want somebody who's struggled with like a substance addiction to think that I'm diminishing their struggle, but I'm
Right.
like I kind of get how you got there because I'm an addict of life. Like, I was
Yes.
one of those people who said, I have an addictive personality. But,
Mhm.
if one is better, 100's great. Like,
Yes.
it was always hyperfixation,
Yep.
obsession,
Yes.
people,
Yes.
substances at times,
Yes.
experiences,
Yes.
and, like, I right now, I'm perpetually addicted to TikTok,
Yeah.
like, there's like, literally, my dopamine centers are like, "Hey, more, more, more." I do feel like I understand. I think it did prevent me from necessarily seeing my son's situation clearly, maybe? I don't even know. I
Yep.
don't really have that many regrets. I mean, there's some things, obviously, but it's also like, I don't know. I just wasn't gonna shame him, you know what I
Right.
mean? Felt
Right.
like I did have boundaries around our space and,
Yep.
I felt like I had great boundaries, but I wasn't gonna be like, "You're a piece of shit for doing
Right.
that." It was just
Well,
like,
and that
"You're a
doesn't ha
human, you did a human thing, let's figure out what the next step is," you know?
right. And it doesn't
But
I mean, that doesn't help anyway, right?
no, it doesn't. And
Yeah,
I had
when
already done all the work to unravel my own shame. So it was like,
yes.
well, I'm not gonna, shame does no good for anyone at any time. I
Right.
don't feel like it has a place ever. So I
No.
wasn't gonna do that. Although, I mean, I know that people think I should have. So it's like, whatever. But I do feel like it's so easy to slip off into I mean, like, food, I'm addicted to food.
Yeah.
I feel like I understand this journey so well
Yes.
because I had all the makings of a drug addict. I just was lucky enough to not become dependent anytime I did
Yeah.
dabble.
Well, you're making such a great point because I may have put the booze down in 1984, but then I picked up food. I became a bulimic temporarily. Then I got put that down. Then I picked up men, sex, relationships.
Oh, been there. Yeah.
You
Mhm,
know what I
mhm,
mean?
mhm.
And then,
Yeah.
so I've literally, then I had cigarettes and I mean, I've been addicted to everything.
Oh, yeah, I'm addicted to my vape. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and especially now with phones, everybody's addicted. So, I mean,
Yes.
and really, it's really interesting too, because when I was 10 years sober, I ended up going to a treatment center. I was literally getting my doctorate degree. I was in California. I'm in a program, and I started to feel like, God, am I nuts? I keep having these unsuccessful relationships. It was really the codependency stuff. So I heard about this treatment facility that dealt with a lot of the codependency, and I went there. And I remember the first day on the board, the guy put addicts, 90% pain and problems, 10% addiction. Co-addicts, 100% pain and problems. So it's like everybody's the same. It's just like some people may be using to deal with their stuff. Maybe someone else is, binging Netflix. Maybe someone else is eating. Maybe someone else is having affairs. It doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of us don't learn really what it is learning how to cope with discomfort, pain, anger, and not act out in some way. And hopefully, people are raising children now. Hopefully, the next few generations, it's going to be more accepted to have feelings, to validate feelings, and all that stuff. But it's going to take a while. I mean,
Yes.
everybody's got stuff. And so yeah, we call it the underlying causes and conditions. Like, what is the stuff that's leading me to feel like I need to go use cocaine or alcohol or pot or whatever? And again, it's pain, it's anger, it's fear, anxiety, shame, guilt, all that stuff, it's my history, things I can't tolerate thinking about that I need to get some space around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's all of it. And it's figuring out how to unpack all that, how to, have acceptance with a lot of it without needing to escape, like you said from the
Yes.
beginning, and having
Yeah.
other tools and remembering we're all human and everybody's got something. We are no different,
Yes.
really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and the reason my show is called Emotionally Unavailable is because that's where everything really started for me was like I took a quiz and it said I was emotionally unavailable and I was like,
Got it.
"What?" So, like, learning what that really looked like, one of the first things that I uncovered was you hit on this earlier when you were talking about we've learned to dismiss ourselves. Well,
Yes.
when we dismiss ourselves, we also have to grow that into dismissing others because
Mhm.
if I don't dismiss your feelings, I'm going to have to deal with what it's bringing up in me. And I
Got
don't
it.
like that. So I was just saying, like, I repeat this example all the time with
Yes.
clients is well, it's like how I used to see the fact that like a child died in a car accident, and my very first thought, like of my first thought was like, oh my gosh, and then the second was, okay, how were the parents at fault? What were they doing so that I can make sure? And I would never do that. So okay, my kids are safe, like because I was afraid all the time, and
Yes.
I had to find a way to control things. But I also didn't know how to sit in compassion for someone else's experience. I had no idea because I have to feel my own shit if I'm going to be compassionate. And I was not willing to do that. I
Yes.
didn't realize that at all. But
Yes.
now I'm teaching people, okay, what would happen if you just said, oh my God, that really sucks?
Yes.
And then you had a tool for how to move through that instead of being like, well, I don't even have to feel bad for you because XYZ. And I'm like, well, why did I hear guilt in there? That it wasn't your fault they were experiencing that anyway. So what if you just had that kindness, had that compassion, and then had a tool for how to not let that drown you, but you didn't tell them their problem didn't matter, you
Right.
know?
Yes. Yes. Oh, super great. I had like 5 different ideas while you were chatting. Yeah, I mean, the thing about guilt is just such a useless emotion. I mean, it
Mhm.
doesn't help at all unless it's guilt over, say, I stole something and I feel guilty, which means I'm human and I need to repair and make
I have
amends.
a conscience. Yeah.
Yes, I have a conscience, exactly, and then the whole shame thing is that I'm bad and something's wrong with me, which of course is a lie, but shame is a killer, and it can keep us really stuck, and the answer to shame is putting your voice to it. The only way to get out of shame is to speak about it,
Yeah.
and because it's like, that saying, "We're as sick as our secrets," and,
Yes.
that whole idea when we don't share something we've done, the shame is gonna kill us,
Oh,
and,
it compounds so badly,
yes.
so
Yeah.
badly, and something I'm really passionate about teaching people is that your brain's gonna lie to you and tell you it's not safe to share it for lots of reasons,
Yes.
and the most common one for me was, well, I had some religious shit where I thought maybe the devil would get me if I
Got it.
shared my fears because I was taught that, but also I didn't know how to, cause giving voice to it at first would really activate it, cause I was working to shove it all down. So I was like, "Oh, no, I can't even talk about it because, and
Yes.
so learning like, okay, and if you cry in front of people when you're stressed, that's okay. Like, I'm just honestly, grief has forced that out of
Yes.
me. Even though I was aware of it before, I can't play because I will lose my mind if I don't do the things I know that I need to do. It will not go well for me. So I'm forcing the issue, but damn it, it's still hard. It's still hard
Yes.
for me to sit and say like I'm upset about this or to just cry openly. I do it because I'm trying to show other people what that looks like.
Yes.
But it's not easy. It's still not easy.
No.
I find myself wanting to be like, "Sorry, I'm crying," and trying to stop it and whatever, but
Right.
I am working really hard on just attending to the moment, just being here and being
Absolutely.
who I am.
Yes. I mean, all of that is so what I do with some people is this exercise around fear because a lot of that stuff, like we talked about that early programming, if I have a fear of crying or I have a fear of expressing my feelings or I have a fear of abandonment or I have a fear of rejection or a fear of not being loved or not being liked or someone getting mad at me. So we do this exercise where we list our fears and then you take a fear, like say the fear of rejection, and you ask yourself the question, when did I first have the fear? What happened? Because the fact is, we're not born. I think the only two fears we're born with is fear of loud noises and fear of falling. So
Mhm.
all fears are collected over time being a human being. So if I have the fear of like what you think of me, and I think about the first time I had that feeling, I was in first grade and I was asked to read something and I didn't read it well, and the teacher laughed. I'm making this up, and the teacher
Yeah.
laughed. And the really devastating part about this exercise is you realize, okay, this event happens. I'm 6 years old. So now I have the fear of other people's opinions. Now, so I figure out a way to manage that, right?
Yeah.
So I become a perfectionist. I become an achiever. I make sure that I'm in control of when I'm around groups of people or whatever my coping skills are. And the thing is now that fear is creating my behavior for the rest of my life. So think about that. An event that happens at 6, I create this coping skill. So we don't really have choices about our behaviors. We think we do, but if that fear is 1 at 6, and then I have the fear of rejection because when I'm in 7th grade, Carl Sampson didn't have a crush on me and I was devastated. Now I have that fear of rejection. Now I'm going to overcompensate by people pleasing and making sure that people like me. So I don't have a choice there either. So our entire personality is developed as these coping skills to these events and fears. So
Yep.
the only way to get to the other side is really identifying what behaviors are not working that I keep doing. Where am I really detached from myself? Because you talk about it, the authenticity. If I'm trying to be authentic, but I'm not allowing myself to be, so I have a fear of like telling the truth or saying what I mean or being myself, then what is that about? And how can I change it? And I often say, like, if you can't practice some new tools, like with your intimate partners or your kids or whatever, practice them with less threatening people. So, say you go to
Right.
the coffee shop and you order a coffee and they make it wrong. Say to them, geez, could you please fix this for me? You know what I mean? Instead of saying, oh, it doesn't
Yes.
matter. So start asking for what you need with less threatening situations.
Yes.
That's
That's
some
such a good
practice in
point.
other ways because someone will say, I can't
Yeah.
tell my husband that he upset me. I mean, you can, but you're afraid to. Why are you afraid? And we can look at that, but then start practicing with your good friend or with your employees or whatever. Like start practicing in less threatening environments. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's such a good point.
Yeah.
Because truly, I had the best conversation with my husband a couple weeks ago because I identified about a year ago that like my intimate relationship is like the scariest shit for me.
Yes.
And so I started unraveling the barriers I had placed between us because I was so afraid of trusting. And then I realized it was me I was afraid to trust. And so that was a
Yes.
whole process. But still, my brain's very convincing and it will tell me I'm very right about things when I'm very
Yes.
not right. And
Yes.
so one of the things that I had realized recently was like how much more comfortable I am to cry in front of strangers and on this show that I am even with him.
Yes.
And so I told him that and he was shocked. He was like, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't it just does not feel safe." And he's the nicest person, like,
Yes,
you know what I mean? But
yes,
because for me, that's so much a part of, like, I'm trying so hard not to hand over too much of myself to you because that might really break me if you die or you leave me, or because my dad died when I was 15,
got it,
also of an overdose, so it was very quick, very
got it.
unexpected, and so that really, like, shaped the way I viewed relationships
Yes,
because, that everyone leaves thing, just that was it. That was
that was
that
it.
was the icing on the cake then, and I was like, "Oh my god, we are all gonna die, and at any time, anyone I love is just gonna die,"
Yes,
and that really came out the most in my
of
relationships,
course,
and
of course.
so if I love you too much, it'll break me, and that's what I really had to how I realized it was me I was afraid to trust because I was like, "Okay, let's say that happens. What are you afraid of? What next? What's gonna happen if that happens? Are
Yes,
you afraid you're gonna die?" And I was like, "I kind of am afraid it would kill me." And
yes,
then I had to work on that not enough narrative. I'm like, "Hey, you're enough. You're enough for any of this. Like, you got all the tools inside of you." But I'm just now verbalizing some of the stuff to him. I
yes.
said all of that to him for the first time the other day, and he was so surprised to hear all of it. Like, "Really? You can't cry in front." It's not like I never have, but, like,
No,
even around my son, I'll catch myself, like, trying to, like, stop the cry, and
yes.
I'm like, "No, no, 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 cry," but I didn't realize how much it bothered me to cry in front of him until I lost my son. Like, I had to
Right,
start paying attention to stuff because my
yes,
brain is a fucking liar.
right. And it just I mean, I often say that our deepest wounds and our childhood stuff always plays out in our romantic relationships. I mean, it just does because that's where the charge is. That's where the most intense feelings are and our longing and all of that stuff. So it's
Yes.
totally normal for it to it is so odd though when you say that, right? Like I mean, I'm in a relationship and similar stuff happens. It's like he's the nicest guy in the world. I can cry anytime I want, but yes, some of these fears of being vulnerable is like, what's the belief? I often talk about, and you've said this, the lies I tell myself. So what is the lie I tell myself if I cry, if I'm vulnerable? And I'm sure there's tons of options. Someone's gonna leave me, or they're gonna be mean to me, or they're not gonna be available, or whatever it is. We have these old beliefs. This seminar I did years ago said if you don't work through that stuff, the beliefs that you had and the responding behaviors when you were young, what you're going to do is going to take your past, you're going to throw it into your future, and you're going to live into your past over and over and
Over
over
and over.
again. And
Yep.
it's so true. I mean, I knew a guy once who so he had this fear of abandonment because of his mom had abandoned the family early on, blah, blah, blah. So what would happen, and this is very simplistic, he'd get into relationships, he'd have the fear of abandonment. So he'd become super controlling and
Yep.
domineering. And what would happen? The women would abandon him. So it's
Yep.
like we do these behaviors out of the old fear, but we're recreating the same thing over and over. So to break those patterns is really important and it takes courage to do something different, like you're saying. And oftentimes it is a crisis or a death or something huge to finally get someone to be like either express anger or express sadness or reevaluate their life or leave their job. I mean, sometimes we can cope with a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, that's why I've become so passionate about working on myself to see how I'm making my outer world match my inner world, and then
Yes.
teaching others the same thing and trying to come up with really relatable examples for
Yes.
people to understand the science behind it. Cause I'm pretty woo woo, so I can make it as woo woo as I want
Yes.
to for myself, but
Yeah.
like just trying to give really grounded examples about you hit the nail on the head with something that I had to learn for myself. If I believe everyone leaves, then I'm going to push people away to confirm that belief.
Right.
I will do everything. I'm not over controlling just because it makes me feel safe. I'm over controlling because I know it's a behavior that pushes them away.
Yes.
And then
Right.
when they leave, I get to go, and this is what I fucking said. And so one of the things that I've been doing is coming up with little catchphrases because I had to do this for myself. If I caught myself saying, "This is exactly why," or "What did I say would happen?" Like any "I told you so" type moments, that was my little subconscious clue to be like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 we're doing the thing. We're doing
Yes.
the thing. We're making our
Yes.
outer world match our inner world." And I'll
Yes.
tell you what, manifestation became a lot easier when I started to realize how I was making my outer world match my inner world. But I'm
Yes.
so passionate about that right now because that's been something that's really helped me grieve
Yes.
is is really honestly understanding all the ways in which my son was doing that, how
Yes.
he had to confirm these beliefs. And so much of that was related to his escaping through drugs. But he had to believe that he didn't need to feel ashamed of those things that, like, and I wish he hadn't, but that, he justifying his behavior over and over and over to confirm his little narratives.
Yes.
And it gives me comfort to think about it in those terms, but it also helps me grow exponentially.
Yeah, I mean, you said something so great, which is, and I often say this, that the only way someone can really change is to say, I am responsible. Meaning, addicts, like I worked with them for years. I mean, we blame everybody else and we say, oh, if you didn't do that, I wouldn't have used. Or my mother wasn't this way, or if my boss wasn't this way, I wouldn't. And it's like the only way someone finally can get clean and sober in my office is when they own, "Oh, I'm responsible for my addiction and my recovery." I can't wait for everybody else to change. That's actually codependency. If my happiness is based on other people changing, I'm screwed. I have to be responsible. I need to be the one that says, "Okay, no matter what I've done, and what I feel, my feelings are my responsibility, my actions are my responsibility, and my thoughts are my responsibility." Instead of, which is the codependent mantra, I'm responsible for other people's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, is the
Yep.
lie. I'm
Yep.
only responsible for my thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. The other thing you said, which is really key, is this idea of the split between what I'm really feeling internally and who I'm presenting externally. I remember this old theory of depression years ago, and I can't remember the exact thing, but the idea was the greater the discrepancy, meaning the greater the differences between what I feel and think and how I'm presenting, the greater the depression. Because if I'm not connected and I'm presenting some false front, that's going to be
Yes.
another way I'm dismissing myself, which is going to lead to depression. Yeah.
Oh my God. And as a person who wore thousands of masks, I can certainly attest
Yes.
to that because
Yes.
I was so out of alignment and incongruent and still telling myself that I should, even when I'm feeling my lowest, go try to put a smile on someone else's face. But it helped in the moment. But
Yes.
meanwhile, I'm never telling anyone how dark it is. And then it got to where I was saying how dark it was, not, like, to the full extent, but, in a way that I also chose to push people away.
Yes.
I say it and now I can't be your friend anymore because you know what
Yes.
I mean? Because that was really dangerous that I just told you that.
Oh,
So, now I have to
right.
make you the bad guy. Yeah.
Right.
We're very good at I mean, and that's the thing. That's why I say I'm not addicted to substances that, you would traditionally think aside from nicotine and caffeine, but I I have the addict mindset. Like I have to constantly work through that shit every
Yes.
day of my life, and I'm okay
Yes.
with that now, but
Yes.
I realized it is a form of shame to blame everyone else. And
Right.
now people think that accountability is this, I call it, cross of perfectionism and to crucify yourself and others when a mistake is made. And so
Right.
people are really uncomfortable when I'm like, "No, I don't give a shit when I make a mistake." No matter the
Right.
magnitude, no matter. 'Cause I'll be like, "Huh, yeah, okay. I don't really like the way I felt when that was done, and how
Yes.
how can I be in alignment with my true self here? That felt out of alignment. Okay, I'm gonna
Right.
do this next time." But it's not me going, "Damn it, Melissa, you fucking
Right.
knew better." You know, I'm not
Right.
doing that to myself anymore. But that is who
Good.
I was in my former life for 1 second before I'd be like, "Well, I would have never done that." And I was the person's, like, trying to use, the finite amount of willpower that we get every day to not scream at my kids, and I'd be
Right.
like, "Keep it together, keep it together." Now I'm screaming, but I wouldn't have done that if you hadn't done normal childhood
Right.
stuff,
Right.
so and just, like, learning, like, "Oh, I have to stay safe no matter what, and I'm the
Yes.
safety.
Yes.
Oh, okay, my bad."
Well, and compassion for yourself and others. It's like, we have these crazy expectations of ourselves. And it's
Yes.
like forgiving ourselves and forgiving others to me is where it's at least at my age right now. It's like none of it matters. It's like if I start judging myself and beating myself up, it's like all that does is get in the way of my growth. I mean, what's the point? I mean,
Right,
really, what is the point?
right.
And if I believe that I'm doing the best I can at any given moment, and so is everybody else, then I can't judge, right?
Right.
Because there's no
Yeah.
judgments to be had. There's only compassion. And
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So
I
I'm with
totally
you.
agree.
I'm with you.
Well,
So
I could
much.
talk to you for hours. I need you
I
to
know.
come back.
I
But
know.
in the
I definitely will.
meantime, tell us where we
Yes.
can find you. Give us the info, and I'll make
Oh,
sure I include
yeah.
it all
I
in my
mean,
show
I have a
notes.
website, drsarahmichaud.com, and there's, information about me. You can email me. You can get my book. I have a little YouTube channel called Leaving Crazy Town. And, it's because I have a sense of humor and, like, we talk about, like you do, really heavy topics, but we try to laugh, and we also give examples from our own lives. I do it with my best friend, Finn, who's
Oh,
an
I love that.
attorney. Yeah, and he's been sober 10 years, and he's hilarious. So and I interview people, and, we do a book club, and we actually just released a video yesterday that's hilarious. We have pets now. So, we have a cat that wrote in about his codependent owner. So, like, check it out,
Oh my god, I can't wait.
and you'll start laughing. So, at Leaving Crazy Town with Finn and Sarah. So check us out.
Okay, and I'll make
Yeah,
sure I include all of that in the show notes. Thank you so much. Seriously,
you
this
were
was
a
such a
delight.
beautiful
You were
conversation.
a delight. And I know
Yay.
I have
Okay,
to wait.
I'm gonna press stop
Yeah.
if you'll hang out for 1 sec.
Yes.
Thanks for coming to Emotionally Unavailable. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, and share.